Hey everyone, welcome to the Ignite podcast. I am your host, Samantha Baker, founder of Heat Strategic Agency. And you're going to want to stay tuned because this podcast is where executives discuss strategic marketing to spark growth and profitability. We go beyond buzzwords to explore how strategic marketing empowers executive leadership, transforms go-to-market motion, and positions businesses to win in increasingly complex, regulated, and trust-sensitive markets. Let's dive in. Our guest is someone founders and CEOs call when growth starts to feel harder than it should. Scott Johnson is a seasoned CEO advisor, board director, investor, and former CEO himself, with over 30 years of experience helping companies break through plateaus and build businesses that are not just successful, but sellable. If you're a CEO, founder, or a growth stage leader looking to scale without burning out or build a business that thrives beyond you, this is the conversation you've been waiting for. Let's dive in with Scott Johnson. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Sam. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. I am so excited to have you as a guest on one of the first podcasts that we're launching. So let's just dive in. What brought you into this space and what keeps you fired up about helping founders break through growth ceilings?
All right. Well, that a little bit of a long-winded answer here, but we'll go back a bit. I've been an entrepreneur for as long as I can remember, literally. Since I was a little kid, I've been trying to build businesses, and I won't get into the weeds of what that looked like when I was like 12 years old or anything, but when I was 16, I had the chance to start my first, what I would call real business. We had employees and real estate and all that. It was a car wash and detail shop in my hometown where I grew up. And we took care of the professionals in town, think about the realtors, the lawyers. We also detailed cars for the local Chevrolet and Ford and Dodge dealership. They'd get a used car trade in and we would detail it up and they would resell it. So it was a ton of fun. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to start this. Had some financing help, as you can imagine, but learned a ton about hiring people, customer service, all the stuff, and made so many mistakes. Just incredible number of mistakes. When you're hiring your high school friends, you can only imagine. We had some people that were not high schoolers working there to hold down the fort because those of us going to school. We couldn't show up to work till the afternoon. So anyway, I sold it before I went to college. And then after college, ironically, I spent 15 years inside of Fortune 100 companies, learned a ton about scale and structure and long-term strategy. And then the past 18 years, I've been in the trenches, growing, scaling, exiting early to mid-stage businesses and companies, where I learned a different set of things like I learned grit and speed and execution. So that's sort of the background. But what keeps me fired up is this. Most founders are so close to the problem that they can't see it clearly. I always referred to when I was running companies, like my company and my business, I'm sort of down in a hole. I'm just doing the thing that I need to do every day to keep moving forward with the company. And very seldom do you get a chance to take a step back and stick your head up out of the hole and figure out what else is going on. So I help self-aware CEOs step back, get aligned, and build businesses that don't depend on them in every single aspect of the business. And when that happens, that moment, when they realize they don't have to do it all themselves, it's like a magical moment. It just unlocks a lot of things. So that's what drives me.
That's amazing. And I have to ask you a very random question that you're not prepared for. Knowing that you grew up really into cars and that was kind of what your first business was around, what was your first car?
A Z28.
Okay.
My parents were crazy, for allowing me to get that car. But yeah,
what color was it?
It was silver.
Nice. You could remember. You'll never forget that. I can tell.
Yeah, no, I wish I still had it.
Yeah.
That would be an awesome car to own today. I think it was a 79 Z28.
That is awesome. All right, back to work. What's one major misunderstanding CEOs have about the scaling process?
Yeah, I'll go back to something I just mentioned. They think they need to do it all themselves. I think that is probably the most common mistake, especially in like the early to mid stage companies. In reality, that mindset becomes their ceiling. In the early days of startups, I don't work with a lot of startups per se, but that's a different environment. And when you're starting something up and there's only a few people around the table, you do have to wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things and there's all sorts of craziness that goes on there. But once you transition, you have some resemblance of product market fit. You have, your thesis has been, somewhat validated. You have to transition. Scaling requires letting go, building structure, elevating others, delegating, elevating others to help, and creating systems that essentially work without you being in the middle of everything.
Hmm.
So if I say this a lot, that if everything runs through you as the CEO or the founder or the business owner, you're not the CEO, you're the bottleneck.
Hmm. What's been one of your most defining strategic decisions and how did it shape your approach?
Yeah, that I don't know how much of this was a decision versus sort of luck of the way things unfolded, but it was my ability to spend time in both the big company world, I guess before that, starting my own business, then spending time in a big corporate world, and then scrappier early to mid-stage companies. Corporate America, as I was mentioning, it taught me things that are really important, like scale and discipline and what good looks like, at a very, very high level. But the smaller businesses teach you a separate set of things like grit and speed and how to lead when everything's on the line. And today I blend both those worlds, structure with some flexibility. You don't want to overstructure a smaller company like you would a large Fortune 100 company. Strategy, but like with speed and execution. So I think having that dual experience is what makes me an effective advisor.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I
Yeah.
agree. That's amazing experience to have. A lot of different companies and different levels of, dare I say, engagement. I don't know. I always think about my career because I didn't plan it this way, but I went from a massive company like Philips to very small startup. And it was so difficult to transition into, but I had no choice but to learn how to wear a bunch of different hats that I probably wasn't qualified to wear at the time, but I had to figure it out and cue grit as you just mentioned.
Yeah, and if you were like me, you probably didn't do it perfectly.
No.
Like that transition, as much as, you may tell yourself, and, I had mentors and coaches around me that were telling me this, but yeah, I remember my first step. I was like, it wasn't perfect, but we figured it out, right? We
Yeah.
were able to adapt and take away exactly what you just mentioned.
Okay, so if you were not doing this kind of transformational work, where would you be applying your skills and energy?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town, and I think when I lived there, we were about 12,000 people. So not teeny tiny, but it was pretty small. And what I saw was, I just feel fortunate that I was able to break out because a lot of people that I grew up with, they never left. I mean, if I go back today, so many people are still there. And it doesn't mean everyone needs to leave, but I think a lot of people they just don't know what they don't know. They don't have the ambition, or they have the ambition, but they just don't know about the options. So what I would do is I would be in classrooms in these smaller towns helping kids who don't come from money, maybe haven't had the exposure that there are other things that they can do with their life and career outside of maybe what their parents have done. In my town, it was a lot of farming and ranching, and there were other things, but just as an example. And I think that I just would love to for those kids that want to explore, like what's the world like outside of, maybe my small hometown. I would love to show them. And I think the right mindset combined with the right mentorship and just exposure with that, anything's possible. And so, yeah, I'm actually working on ways to do some of that today, but that's what I'd like to do more of.
I love that. And after you mentioned this to me before, I was thinking about it. When I was a senior in high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And half of that was because I didn't know what was out there. The standard answer is I want to be a teacher, a doctor, a police officer, a lawyer.
Right,
And
right.
I threw myself in college for dance. And then I was like, oh, now I know what I want to do. And so, like, could you imagine what impact that could make for someone like you to be able to talk one on one or just to classrooms in general or provide workshops at even colleges where you could provide them more insight as to what it's really like out here in the corporate world.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really simple to start. Like, what does amazing look like? What if you knew you could do anything in the world? Like, dream, just dream, like what, dream big, and that's really a good place to start. Whether it's high school kids, college kids, or founders, it's
Yeah.
really the same sort of principle.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit more into your perspective of marketing. Now, I know that you're not a marketing specialist, but you definitely have all the ins and outs and experience to understand how it contributes to an organization or a business. So, to you, what does successful marketing look like in companies positioned for growth and exit?
You can test me here and give me a grade, because this is obviously your area of expertise. Great marketing tells the story of what makes the business unique and why it matters. I'll give you an example that always sticks with me, and I didn't come up with this, but it was sort of the internal running joke. But I worked with this company, and they had an incredible product, but they couldn't explain it. They couldn't tell the story. So the inside joke was, we sell cold dead fish, and our competitors sell sushi. And their pitch deck was, I don't even remember. It was so many slides I could never get through it. So we spent a few weeks working to distill their message down to a couple of clear sentences, and then suddenly customers like aha, I always say the aha moment happened. Aha, okay, now I get it. And investors got it, and their revenue took off. I mean, just by having, and it wasn't, just to be clear, it wasn't my work. I was involved in identifying the problem and creating some initiative around it. But bringing in folks like yourself to do the work, just had an impact. So when you're scaling or preparing to exit, marketing isn't just about awareness. It's about clarity, clarity of what you do, the value that it brings, clarity of your brand, how you differentiate. And I always say, and people have told me this, like if you can't tell it to like a 8-year-old, or if you can't say it in 10 seconds, why your business matters and why it's better, guess what? The buyers can't either.
Yes. And consistency is key. So you put in all of that work, you get to a place that is resonating, and your target audience and your investors are really enjoying what you're offering and you're differentiating yourself and it's clear. But then 3 months after that, are you still saying it? Are you still showing up multiple places with that same message, or are you tweaking it? And of course, if you're a marketer out there listening, you know that you want to tailor a messaging for the personas. But from a brand standpoint, from a corporate brand standpoint, you've said this to me many times, you have to say it 7 times for someone to actually digest it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's marketing or anything else, right? As
Yeah.
we're transforming companies and getting people to think differently and changing all sorts of things within a company, it's the same thing. So it's just it's humans. So if humans are involved, they have to hear something 7 times before it sticks.
Where have you seen marketing have the biggest impact?
Yeah, marketing, when done right, this is the way I think about it, aligns the outside story with the inside reality. And what that means is it's not just about like catchy headlines or phrases. It's about expressing what makes your company different in a way that's authentic and repeatable. And that alignment, if you can get that right, it builds trust between your customers, the people you're recruiting, your investors, all everyone. And so when marketing reflects the company's true values, their capabilities, and their experience and things of that sort, it builds credibility. It attracts aligned potential customers and people, talent, new employees,
Mm-hmm.
and drives growth and more sustainability. I've seen it do other things, but I mean that to me, that's the core foundation. It can unlock pricing power and attract higher quality customers and shift. There's lots of things you can do with it, but the last thing is, it will also drive there's speed, moving deals to the top of the funnel much faster. So there's lots of things, but like the big foundational stuff is, again, aligning that outside story with the inside reality is how I say it. I don't know how well that resonates, but that's
Mm-hmm.
how I think about it.
And I know what you mean when you say that, and you're talking about, consistency and how you go to market and what you can internally do from a process, operational, cross-functional standpoint versus what you're actually offering in the market. But there's also something there that makes me think about integrity too, because at the end of the day, you want your sales team and your leaders to be talking about something in a genuine way, something that's real. You don't want to, from a marketing standpoint, I would never want to provide our sales team a story that isn't completely true or even close to being true of what we offer. Like, I want to set everyone up for success.
If you're not genuine, people know, right? They'll
Yeah.
figure that out. Like it's you just can't hide that stuff. So I agree 110% with what you said. And yeah, I think if you're not genuine, when I'm working with companies on things like core values, there are different types of core values, and one type that is sort of a core value trap is an aspirational core value. So it's something we want to be, we'd like to be, but we're not there yet. And I always say you can't go there because it's not genuine. Maybe someday, you could change your core value, but same thing with marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. How does brand contribute to valuation, talent, or board level confidence?
Well, yeah, I think that's a great question. I think brand is leverage. It's trust at scale. When your brand aligns with your core values, it helps you. I said this earlier. It helps you track the right people to come work within the organization. It sort of repels the ones that aren't a good fit, that aren't going to have that alignment. It builds confidence with your board and your potential customers. It becomes a differentiator for the right type of customer, essentially. And a strong brand, it's not fluff. People don't really understand what is brand. It's not fluff at all. It's a strategic signal that says we know who we are, we know where we're going, and we've got the team to go there and do it. So I don't know, how does that resonate with you?
It makes me, yeah, I love that. I love that because I've been in situations and actually just got out of a podcast recording where very seasoned CMO, sits in a boardroom, and many times the board doesn't ask any questions to marketing because there's a lot of thought or perception that marketing is just designing t-shirts or fluff and
Mhm.
colors and
Right.
logos. And it's so much more than that. It's brand, tone of voice, but like the core values of the company, I think what people don't actually understand is when you're building what people know to be brand guidelines, the core values are taken into consideration to go into your brand guidelines. The core values are the pillars behind everything that we do, and the core values are used in a strategic way. Our messaging, it all circles back. It's very psychological,
Yeah.
and there's always three steps ahead in our minds. And we're, blessing our curse, that's how we think, three steps ahead. And so while I think many people think that way, I think it's just not perceived that marketing thinks that way. And so what you're saying that brand is leverage is spot on. And I really appreciate and value that you view marketing that way as the leader that you are.
Yeah, well, you're the expert in this, and I just love like the way you articulate that. That message should be louder, right? People hear that 7 times. So, when they're working on their core values to take
Yeah.
that so seriously, but then as they transition the core values into everything they do, like marketing, yeah, you need to say that like 700 times so that people can hear it at least
I'll
seven.
make sure that when I edit this, I'll put that on repeat a few times in here.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm going to call you out. How has your view of marketing evolved as a CEO turned advisor?
Oh yeah. Well, early on in my career, I really undervalued marketing. And I think part of it, working in the corporate world, there was just I won't get into the details, but we just had a negative perception of marketing. I'll just leave it at that. And this is a Fortune 100 company. So it was just very different. So in my mind, marketing wasn't valuable, and I thought, hey, sales is really what drives growth. And now I know, marketing defines the battlefield, and what I mean by that is where the battlefield is where and how your company competes. It tells the world like who we are and why we matter and what problems we're built to solve. And if you don't do that intentionally, your competitors will, first off, and they'll define it for you, and then you're playing, by their rules. So the biggest mistake I see is really not putting marketing under sales, not pulling marketing in at a high strategic level. I worked with a very senior marketing expert years ago, and I give her all the credit. Her name's Claudia. In San Diego, and she taught me all this. And marketing needs a seat at the table because it informs the brand, positioning, pricing, everything that drives enterprise value. If marketing chooses the wrong battlefield, now sales is going to show up to fight and they're going to lose. So marketing is critical. And so I think that I made those mistakes. I undervalued marketing. I thought sales like really drove growth, and like, yeah, we need some early in my career. I made all these mistakes. So as an advisor, as you said earlier, I try not to be an expert. I'm not an expert in marketing, but I know enough about the fundamentals. I know what good looks like now. And when I don't see good, I'm calling Sam to come help.
I didn't pay him to say that for those listening. But kudos to Claudia for internally educating. Like, that is hard. I've come into companies and I've even been in interviews before where someone has been very transparent and candid with me and said, look, you're going to have to educate internally about the power of marketing because we've had this problem and it's really hard to crack. And you're just going to be viewed as a service and you have to change it because we need marketing to do better.
Yes.
And when marketing is viewed as a service, it actually prevents marketing from doing good. And the success that can come from an empowered marketing team is immeasurable because it's very qualitative, but it's very strategic. And I think that I've seen over the past 15 years, I've witnessed the ways of trying to fix this problem in a very granular way where you start to require that demand gen teams are working on commission, or you start to do sales qualified versus marketing qualified. And that doesn't help the cross-functional alignment or the strategy.
No.
So
Yeah.
it's been an interesting ride, but I do think that there's more to the story and more people are starting to understand marketing for what it is as a strategy. But
That was going to be my question to you is like, is this the same old, you're just seeing the, or it sounds like you are seeing, some different.
yeah, I'll say I think it depends on the company size. And this is not hard truth, so anyone can debate me on this, but from what I've witnessed, large companies are still, it's too hard to change that at a large company. They've got massive teams that are usually global, and even within the marketing teams, their individual teams like are siloed, right? They've got a content team or a brand team, and they're all just working individually. So those types of companies, it's harder to internally educate and change that. But I do feel like startups and thinking about positioning when they're going to market are much more open to the idea of having marketing have a seat at the table. And if I've worked in companies in the past, and where I found the way to quickly find quick wins and internally educate fast is by pairing up and just being really close with the head of sales. Because if I can convince, sorry to any of the head of sales listening, I wasn't manipulating you, but if I can convince the head of sales to be on my side and see strategy and marketing, then that is an easier battle at that point. But if I can't, then it's just uphill for the rest of my time at that company. But I'm rabbit holing a bit here, Scott. The one thing that I will say is one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had was at a very small startup, and myself and the VP of sales became very close. And it got to the point where it was a joke and meant to be very professionally, but it was a joke made where we'd walk into the room and the teams together would say, "There comes mom and dad." Because we were aligned, lock and step, and we had the same vision. We were walking to the same North Star, and we were empowering them to push forward to that, and we were helping them with whatever we needed. And while we joke about it and we think it's so funny, and it actually was because we were a team, and you're not supposed to call your teams family, but we were operating very closely to that North Star. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, we could go in more of a rabbit hole, but so many times I get calls on a sales problem, go to market strategy problem, a revenue problem, a marketing problem, and what you find is that the foundation of that company is broken, and there is no North Star, there is no why, there is no vision, and if there is, it's in the founder's head or the CEO's head, and it's not the core value, like all those. So what you said is like you had something to align around. Like it's so much better when you have those things in place, the foundation is solid, and then everyone can get aligned around that. And this is the result that you just described.
Yeah.
Great. Love it.
And the one thing that I will say is that I do find it that often that when people undervalue marketing, it's typically not intentional. It's just because they're running so fast and feel pressure, or there's not cross-functional alignment, or the lack of the North Star, exactly what you just said. It's not an intentional lack of respect. And sometimes we marketers can feel like it's lack of respect or understanding or listening, but it's never, what I've witnessed is it's not intentional from others.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. If the CEO is not doing a good job to set the foundation, strong marketing, sales, all the other leaders, they're going to go do what they need to do. And so it's the job of the CEO, the founder, to build that right foundation so that their team can work well together, get aligned around where we're going and all those things. So yeah. Awesome. That was a fun cover. I like that.
Yeah. Okay. So what strategic or operational trends are you watching in the next 1 to 2 years?
I know everyone is saying this today, and I don't want to just be another, but I think it needs to be said 7 times at least, and it's AI. And I'm not at all saying that everyone needs to have an AI company or they need to sell AI, but they have to learn it, integrate it, leverage it in some way. It's actually today reshaping everything to some degree. It doesn't mean it's going to replace everything, but it's reshaping operations, how to drive, efficiency. And you're already seeing companies that are experimenting and leveraging AI are slowly moving up and away from their competition. I've read this a couple of different times, and I listen to the All In podcast sometimes, and they were talking about it. And the companies that are leveraging from a coding perspective are seeing a 5 to 10% monthly improvement in productivity and efficiency, compounded monthly. This isn't an annual number. This is monthly. So if you go a few quarters getting 5 to 10% improvement over the course of a year, I mean, that's massive. That is really massive. But to
Wow.
kind of bring it back to like, how do you start? Because I think these earlier to mid-stage companies, companies that are, 10, 20, 30 million in revenue, I think sometimes they just like, I don't know exactly where to start. And so, yeah, I think you can start by just thinking about AI as a potential problem solver. What are some of the problems? Instead of saying, okay, where can I plug AI into the company? Rather say, where do we have issues today? And can we bounce the issue that we're dealing with, the problem that we're trying to solve, by some sort of AI solution and see if there's a match there.
Hmm.
And I have a couple of examples that I've seen like really quick leverage. One is with sales, going back to a sales team example. And in this particular company, they felt like their sales team was just really reactive and not a proactive sales team. And so they found a tool that basically is a co-pilot to the salesperson while they're on sales calls. It also plugs into their CRM notes and it analyzes that. It's able to real time surface buying signals. And then after a call, it recommends specific follow-up steps for that customer, for that prospect, for that conversation, versus saying, hey, this is just generic. It's based on the conversation. Send them this case study in X number of days. Highlight the ROI aspects here because that's what they talked about. So they've seen very quickly that they've increased the close rate and their sales team is just less drained. It's a lot of compute power in a human brain to like process all this different stuff for every single interaction that you're having. So anyway, sales.
Listeners want to know what it is. What is that tool?
Yeah, it's called Tempe,
Okay.
TMPAI.io.
Okay. That
So
sounds very impactful.
yeah, it's very cool. And then another example, I work with a company that they admitted, because part of what I try to help people do as a part of the work I do is use data in basically better. Like data is so powerful if used well. And they still felt like, hey, we've been flying blind around here for a long time. We're still trying to learn how to use data. And so we implemented, or they implemented, I can't take any credit for this, Notebook LM to help them analyze some data so that they could input spreadsheets and then Notebook LM would summarize trends and explain KPIs and yeah, that sort of thing. So basically just help identify like what's in here. I mean, you've given me all this data. Like what should I be taking away from this? And it helped them address some margin issues they had and help them to make decisions faster. And these are like super simple examples, but
Hmm.
I think a lot of companies need some simple examples to just get going, just to start to use AI and see like what's the impact. You can take this to another level and truly start automating things like if you're a software company and you can't automate all your coding, but you can automate aspects of the coding and it will only get better over time. Call centers, there's lots of other things. But anyway, those are a couple of things. But at the end of the day, it was a founder I met recently. I asked him about how are you using AI, and he said, "Well, we know we need to, but it's a future initiative." And I'm just like, it can't be a future initiative. You have to start
Yeah.
testing and trying to do things with AI today, or you're going to lose. I mean, the companies that are doing things today, 5-10% per month improvements, that's hard to catch after a year.
So I'm going to throw something at you. I think I'm hearing you say instead of replace, use AI to elevate and enhance. But I know that there are certain things that you can replace, more of the tedious things, as you just gave great examples for. So if a CEO came to you and was just riffing about their growth plan and said, instead of hiring this role, I'm going to automate and use this AI instead. Like, what would your gut reaction be? Like, between AI and a role, like a actual body.
Yeah, it really depends on the business. I think, if you have call centers, as an example, I have a couple of clients that run call centers today, and they are literally replacing bodies
Mm.
with AI. Not all, like the more sophisticated the call,
Mm-hmm.
humans still need to be in the loop. And to your point, the humans that are still in the loop, they're using AI, so they're
Mm-hmm.
more efficient, but they have replaced, level one, level two call center personnel with a bot. And then again, it depends on the business, but
Mm-hmm.
that's one example that comes to mind.
Yeah. So it definitely, like, you'd have to peek under the hood and really understand what the strategy and is going on behind the scenes before you'd be able to say one versus the other, which people should realize when they're making that decision, that it's not taken lightly. It's very strategic and intentional and with good thought. Is that a
Right.
fair statement? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All
Start with the
right.
problems. What are the problems in your organization? If you could wave a magic wand and fix any problem, like what's the priority? What's the top issues? Let's just start at looking at those, and then I say bouncing it by AI. I mean, literally and just thoughtfully. Okay, how might AI help us solve this? Do a little research. Ask AI, for crying out loud, if it can fix this problem, and start there. But just start with the problems. What are
Mm-hmm.
the issues? If you could fix these issues today, it would move you up and to the right. Start with the top three, and see where you go, see where you land.
Yeah. All right. Last question, Scott. What's a hill you're willing to die on when it comes to scaling companies?
Oh, there's a few, but if I have to pick one, it's people. Yeah, people, people, people. Having the right people in the right seats, aligned around a shared set of core values with clear accountability. I mean, that's the foundation of any company. And you can have a great set of core values and structure and accountability, but if the wrong people are in there, it doesn't work. So if you have to prioritize anything, it's definitely people. Without it, nothing scales. I've seen great ideas fall apart because the team couldn't execute, and I've seen average ideas win because the team was aligned and accountable. Some of the things that we've been talking about. So you can't fake your way through the people part, and it all starts there.
I feel like my experience has been, and I know businesses have to scale and evolve with people, but whenever you get into a very, very small startup and you're with the founders, and the best case scenario is the founders that have already done the work of really understanding their goals, their strategies, their plan, their operating model, their core values. And when you get in with the founders that have already locked arms on those things, it makes it very easy. But I've also experienced going into companies where, founders have left or people have left, and you've got a lot of different people coming in from different experiences that weren't there at the inception of the company, and you're trying to figure out how to work together. And that can be challenging for everyone. And there's no right or wrong answer, but when you're just a bunch of different people that aren't necessarily all the founders of the company, I found it a little bit more challenging. Is that fair from your expertise?
100%. But if you have a set of core values that you're hiring or firing, like when I recommend how you evaluate people, there's two axes. On the horizontal axis, it's productivity. Are you, whatever your role is, whatever you're accountable for, are you on a scale of 1 to 10? are you really hitting the ball out of the park for your function and the expectations and the outcomes? And you grade that. But on the other axis, it's all about, are you living our core values? And if you're not, if you're living the core values all the time, you're 9 or 10. But if we use this example of sort of camping and mountain climbing and different things. And the example is, people that they're fun to hang out with. They're, I'm sorry, I have it wrong. They're highly productive, but they don't care about your core values. You probably don't even want to be around. I mean, they're cancer to an organization. You have to move them out. So if you have an aligned set of core values and you're hiring and making other decisions based on that, you have a clear vision. We are going here in the next 10 years. This is where we're taking the company, and this is why it matters. If you just get some of those foundational things, it works all that out. Even if the original founder isn't there, somebody's running the company, and it's their job to make sure they're crystal clear and they have alignment around where we're going, why it matters, and what the strategy is to get there. If you get people aligned around that and there's still a problem, then maybe they don't fit. But what I find is you have great people or good people or whatever who want to do good, but there's no direction. So they end up all working to the best of their ability in their silo, and that doesn't really align with the others. And that's where you get the chaos that you're describing. So I really think it doesn't matter if the original founder's there or if someone else is there. This foundational stuff that we never really want to look at. We just want to say, hey, we're not selling enough. Our marketing sucks. Our operations is a mess. It's just easier to say those things than go back and fix the root problem, fix the foundation of this house we call a business. That's my soapbox.
No, that was great. I mean, the expertise and the advice that you've provided in this podcast are invaluable. And again, if you're out there and you're a CEO, founder, or growth stage leader, contact Scott. Now, Scott, I know I'm not exactly your persona, but I will thank you for all of the help that you've given me in launching my agency. At a point in time, you asked me some really hard questions and I didn't know the answers, but you were able to also kind of look at my characteristics just as a human and call me out on them. And so that is something that I will forever be grateful for. And I just want all of the listeners out there to realize that you are the real deal, and you are such a help, such a support system, but such a realist in having the experience and the skill set to help these CEOs and leaders get the ball rolling for their businesses.
Well, you're a rock star. You're doing great things. You're self-aware, and it doesn't matter where you are in your career. I don't care what company you're running, what role. You need a set of outside eyes and ears to ask the tough questions, to help you think differently. So it's my pleasure I've always had that in my career. I still have a coach. I still have someone that holds me accountable. And I just believe that, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, the greats, Tom Brady, they all had coaches to, challenge them and hold them accountable. So it's my pleasure to have the opportunity to help you, and you've helped me as well. So thank you.
You're a GOAT right alongside all of those MLB stars. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us today, Scott. I hope to have you again on here, maybe a round 2 with some more questions, and I'll be drilling you with some more thoughts.